Hello and welcome. I'm Lenny Tvedten, and each month we're going to visit with Martin County veterans on a series called Their Sacrifices, Our Freedom. Today I'll be visiting with Neil Iverson and Michael Tow, and thank you for your service and for being in my book. I appreciate that very much. So first of all, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and Mike, I'll start with you.
I was born and raised in Fairmont. I'm married to my wife Becky. I have 4 children, a daughter and 3 sons. I'm a retired lawyer. That's about in a nutshell.
Okay. Neil.
My name's Neil Iverson. I live in Fairmont. My wife's name is Barb. I have 2 children, Drew and Jessica.
Okay, good, Neil, thanks. Now let's talk a little bit about your time in the military, what you did, where you served, branches of service, and so forth. And Mike, start with you again.
Well, I enlisted in 1980, interestingly enough, with my youngest brother. We both went in as a buddy platoon thing that they had back then.
What branch?
Army.
Army.
Went to Fort Benning, and for both basic and AIT, both came out as 11 Hotel, which is infantry anti-armor. After serving for 2 years, I then got out of the Army, went to the Army National Guard, went through ROTC at the University of Minnesota, got commissioned in 83. From there, I came back down here to Fairmont, was the company commander, also served as scout platoon leader, the motor platoon leader, the tow platoon leader, and was the XO. Then I went on to serve in the battalion for 2 of the 135, and ultimately ended up at division for the 34th Infantry Division. So there, after being there for a while, I got activated for Desert Storm, and at that point I had been transitioning from the infantry to the armor, so I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, moved with my wife and at that point a one-year-old daughter. Went down there, got ready to deploy to Iraq as an armor platoon leader. I was a captain at the time, and that's the interesting part about the Merchant Marine in the United States. They were supposed to be ready at any time to do things for the Army or whoever. They loaded all our tanks up on the ships. Mm-hmm. They started them across to Iraq, and every one of the ships they were loaded on broke down about the middle of the Atlantic. So by the time they got them in, the war, as you realize, once it started and we started our counterattack, was over within 2 weeks, so we never actually got to deploy in Desert Storm. But
what year was that?
That was in 1990.
1990.
Yes.
Okay, and you were working with tanks, you said?
At that point, I was in the armor, yeah. I'm one of the few guys you're going to meet. I went from the infantry to the armor to the JAG Corps, and then became a military judge.
Okay, tell us about the JAG situation, how you became a military judge, and what happened regarding that in Iraq.
Okay. Well, when I was first activated for Desert Storm, I noticed that there weren't any lawyers running around, and I was already an attorney at the time. And I thought, well, instead of sitting inside a tank, maybe it'd be better and safer for my family if I switched and did a branch transfer into JAG, so I did. Then in 2009, I got activated for Operation Iraqi Freedom and deployed to Iraq. At that point, we had all 4 of the kids there for my wife to take care of, which is a huge job when your husband deploys.
Now, were you on active duty that whole time?
No, I was in National Guard at that time, Army National Guard, and got activated.
Okay, all right.
So once I deployed over there, they put me. I was the chief rule of law for the it was the 34th Viking Infantry Division was up there at that point in time. And then they, as the chief of rule of law for the 9 southern provinces in Iraq, I got to meet every judge and every PDOP, which is the same thing as a chief of police, for every one of the southern provinces down there.
And how is their legal system? Similar to ours?
Not at all. They have a system called WASTA, and every time we went to talk to a judge about doing something like getting warrants for people that we wanted to arrest and try for war crimes, the judge would want his WASTA, which meant he wanted like a up-armored Humvee and gasoline or a generator or something of that sort in order to sign the warrants, which is totally contrary to the concept of rule of law, but you couldn't break them of that. Similarly, the PDOPs, our training there, worked with the British Embassy with those guys, and they was very hard to convince them. We brought them in from multiple classes to teach them how to do interviewing and questioning without beating the prisoners into confessions, because that was their way of doing things there.
And the PDOP was like the chief of police?
Correct.
Okay.
And the other thing that I did was inspect all the prisons and help build several prisons while we were over there. So it was a very interesting experience with a culture that I believed in, and it's proved to be true. You're not going to change them, no matter how much we want to make them a democracy. That's not going to work in that country.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think what you did had any lasting effect on their legal system?
I think as soon as they got everything they could get for their WASTA and out of the United States, they went right back to doing business as usual. And I think they do that to this day.
Sure. Okay. Neil, you also had some, I thought, really interesting experiences when you were in the military, especially dealing with intercepting codes. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I graduated in '68. I went to college in Mankato State. They implemented the draft. I had a very low number in the draft.
You were a winner then.
Yeah. Well, yeah. First time in ever. So I figured the best thing to do to stay out of the infantry would probably be to enlist. So I went down and talked to the draft guy in Mankato, and he suggested that he looked into different areas for me, and he had me come back down, and he said, I've come across this branch of the military that's called the Army Security Agency. He said, you won't be in the infantry, and he said, one problem is it's a 4-year enlistment. And I said, I didn't really think too much about that. But then I thought, well, I'll give it a shot and see what happens. So I enlisted. I ended up down in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. And then after that, I went to Vint Hill Farms in Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. There, I learned Morse code. I was there for probably about 4 months.
How long did it take? A long time to learn Morse code?
Yeah.
Did that stick with you then, the Morse code?
Oh, it's a curse now. I can look at anything and dot it out in a heartbeat. I went through the school and got finished, and then I got my orders. Didn't want to go to Vietnam very badly, but I was told that's where I was going to go. So I ended up in Phu Bai, Vietnam, which was located probably about 20 miles south of the DMZ and close to the South China Sea. Got situated, we had radios, and what we did was we knew what the North Vietnamese were doing because they were sending all their messages in Morse code, and that's what we were doing. We learned Morse code. We had our radios so we could travel the waves and find the people that we were looking for. They all had certain call signs, and we knew that. And how we knew that, I don't know. It came from a different branch in the Army Security.
So when you intercepted a code,
yes.
Let's see, what happened then, or what did you do with it?
We typed it out. It came through the headphones as dits and dots, but with enough practice, we just were able to type out the letters. And we did them in 5 groups, 5-letter groups. And we did that, and then we had another branch in the Army Security Agency that deciphered all that.
So the purpose then, once you did that and you passed that code on, they would decipher it so they would know what the enemy or the North Vietnamese, what their next move was, so they could be prepared for it,
or where they were located.
Where they were located.
Once, if we could get where they were broadcasting from, we had certain groups in the military that could pick up their messages and where they were located from. So that was pretty much what we did for them. Yeah.
How many people were doing the job that you did, or was yours kind of a unique situation?
We had a bunch. We had a building that had probably 6 to 8 rooms, and we probably in each room we had about 20 guys that all had their radios and were intercepting messages.
Was this all day, 12-hour day, or
Round the clock.
Round the clock.
We had 3 shifts.
Okay, that's what I was going to get at. Yeah,
We had day, evenings, and overnights. Fortunately, I was in the days most of the time, but every once in a while they'd switch us around.
Was there any one of those time periods where there was more traffic and codes going through, or was it pretty much
It was
regular?
It was regular, and it was busy. It was. We all had a lot of work to do. When we got into our shifts and started working, it didn't seem like it took very long before we were done with our shift.
Sure. How long were you over there?
A year.
1 year?
Yep.
Did that the whole time?
Yes.
Okay. Neil, when you were decoding those messages, did you ever come across any that really stood out to you, like, hey, this is really important or significant?
The stuff I was typing, I had no idea what I was typing. I was just what they were sending, and we were putting it down in our alphabet. We had other people that deciphered what the messages were. So, but yeah, we would find out when we came in for our shift that we were certain groups we had to look for. They knew what their call signs were, so we just got on the radio and went around until we could find them. And usually there's a lot of background noise and stuff,
Sure.
and the people that we wanted to find usually had a good, clear, loud message. So we knew when we got to that and then saw their call signs, we knew that these were the guys we were wanting to find out. After that, we would type the messages out, let somebody, we had guys that would come in and take it so they could decipher what we had said or typed out. And once we got done typing, we didn't know what happened with it after that. They never really let us know. But on occasion, they would say, we need to find these people. They're important, and we got to get rid of them.
As both of you think back over your time in the military, what would you say that's something that really stands out in your mind? Something memorable, maybe humorous, maybe serious, maybe who knows, whatever. So, is there anything that you could relate in that regard that stands out in your mind, Mike?
Well, I suppose if you want one serious and one kind of humorous, the serious one is that their holy day over there is on Friday, and that's also their payday. And so, generally speaking, just about every Friday they get their money and run over to Iran and buy some missiles, and they come back and set them up and shoot them at us. So it was an interesting evening on Fridays and Saturdays as a general rule.
Sounds like it.
It wasn't very fun.
No.
On the humorous note, one of my trips, we went to a little town called Alcorna, and they had this great big sign there and say it's where the location of the Garden of Eden was.
Oh.
It's where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers meet at Alcorna, and they have this sign up right in front of this great big called the Tree of Life, and it's a huge, huge tree which has been dead as a wedge, I would imagine, for about 200 years. And it's in the middle of the most godforsaken area you ever want to be in your life, and it doesn't really look much like the Garden of Eden.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Neil, how about you?
Well, we were close to the ocean. We had an air base that was right next to the ocean, and then we had our facility, and then we had the mountains. The NVA were in the mountains. And we all had to do guard duty at some point in time, regularly. And that often meant from like 8 in the evening till 6 in the morning. And the one thing that was always a memory of mine was it was probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and things, you wanted to stay alert and see what was going on, but boy, if it was a quiet evening, it was pretty tough to do that. But so we were just sitting in our bunker and looking around, and all of a sudden, they're out towards the mountains. At the base of them, I saw a big yellow-red streak come up out of the ground.
It kind of caught your attention.
Got my attention. I called the base and I said, "We're getting hit. We're getting hit." And they said, "Where? Where?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It ain't landed yet." About that time, the airport behind us exploded.
Oh my!
So that was probably the most interesting thing I did in a year.
Yeah, that would catch your attention.
Yeah.
No doubt.
We also had groups, NVA groups and stuff that were very important, and we needed to get any communications that they could. So they were a priority of ours, and we had so many different branches that some of our branches could tell us what the call signs were before we even got on the radios and looking for them. And that's how we found them, because they were always calling each other. And once we found them, then we would let our sergeant in the room that we had found them, and then they decided what we needed to do with it. But we recorded everything that was sent out. So.
Okay, interesting. Well, I know, having been in the service myself, it did have an influence on my life. Is there a way that you think the military influenced your life after you've been out, Mike?
Well, after doing 31 years in there, I got to admit, I was shocked at how much I missed it after I did retire. As a military judge and as a JAG officer, I probably went through and did family planning and wills for people who were deploying, and in the thousands, and so you meet a lot of troops.
They're really important and meaningful to those people.
Yeah, and you really have a major impact on life. We had
Right.
several deaths. I had to go to court and testify several times for contested estates and that type of thing for soldiers who did die.
Sure.
And so it leaves a. Well, and you guys both know, you make friends in the military in a whole different way than you will
Right.
somebody who's not been in the military, doesn't understand how quickly friendships develop and how intense they are for your life.
And how important they are at the time.
It's a pretty different thing, and you really miss that.
Yeah. Neil,
Yeah.
any comment on that?
Yeah, just being isolated away from everything, and you just become a family with these guys. And there's not just a couple, there's a lot of guys, and
Right.
they come from all areas of the country, and you get a really good education about other people, what's important to them and what isn't in their areas in the country, and you make friendships that last forever.
Yeah, I guess I felt too. It was probably 4 of the best years of my life, actually. I didn't want to go to begin with, but once I was there, it was good. Okay, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us today and doing the interview. Very interesting from both Mike and Neil. Appreciate it a lot. I'd also like to thank the family of Mike Geary, Sweet Financial Partners, Lenny Voigt and Company CPAs, Lacey Prentice, American Legion Post 36, for sponsoring this program. We'll see you next time on Their Sacrifices, Our Freedom.
Well, there you have it, another episode of Martin County on TV. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we welcome you to tune in again Thank our sponsors for making this happen, and remember, it's not just the past, but the present that tells our story.